Live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of our Fossil Creek classes. Now, it may be right now that you're watching this, or it may be sometime in the future, but I bet you can guess what time of year it is, based probably on the name of the class, but also on my attire for the evening, morning. Anyway, we are going to delve into a little bit of our holiday plant care this evening, or again this morning, and I am very excited to be talking about a couple just different, more seasonal plants and just kind of live decorations that a lot of you will have around this time of year, and if you don't, then you might want to, spruce up your home by either having a literal spruce or something very similar to that. But today we're going to talk again about kind of living decorations like wreaths or grave blankets or garland or Christmas trees. And we're also going to delve into some of our more, let's just say, tropical holiday plants as well. So I would love to start out by talking a little bit more about our greenery. Thank you. I appreciate it. Got a comment saying, like your hat. I also like my hat. Thank you very much. But let's kick it off with some greenery. So, of course, many of you may have a live Christmas tree that is living in your home. And if you do have a live Christmas tree, there's a couple things you're going to want to do. So to start, a little background on them. Christmas trees are generally grown on farms or different kind of plantations around the U.S. They will be most notably growing in the northern states, especially Michigan, Minnesota, Montana, some Midwest, then of course Oregon and Washington, and quite a bit in Canada as well. But many Christmas trees, regardless if you live in Florida or Alaska or Colorado, like we are here, or really any of those other states, more than likely, if you ask your nursery professional or ask your garden center employee where you're getting your Christmas trees from, many of them may not know, because that's really only the person that's ordering that does that. Now, many of them will come from those states. If you are curious, and I've gotten several questions this year, ours have personally come from Michigan and Oregon, where they have some great populations of farms up there. But on top of where they're located, it's also important to know that not a whole lot of people are buying Christmas trees, live Christmas trees, as much, and that's for a couple reasons. I mean, there's environmental concerns, as well as just, new developments in fake trees and lights that can be associated with that, other decorations, implementing different great cultures into the holiday season. But anyway, if you are curious where your Christmas trees are coming from, it is more than likely in those northern states, Pacific Northwest, upper Midwest, into Canada. That's where a lot of them are grown. You will not see a lot of people growing evergreens or Christmas trees here in the Front Range of Colorado or in general in Colorado, and that's for a couple reasons. Number one, our soils are really not great for growing those types of plants. Many of those conifers, those firs that you get, really love that rocky, well-draining, acidic soil, and we have very few of those things. We do not have acidic soil in a majority of parts in the state. We have clay, very, very, very water-holding and heavy soils, and we also do not have the acidity in our soils that are necessary. To add on to this, we also have quite a bit of a blackbird population here in the States, and blackbirds love to hang out on the tips of those trees. If you do not know what I'm talking about, I'm going to use this tropical plant as an example. So you have your tree standing up. The tip, that newest growth up here, is going to be very important for conifers. A lot of times you'll hear people say, don't top your spruce trees, don't top your pine trees, and that's for good reason. Once you take off the leader of any conifer, it becomes very difficult for them to retain any shape. They'll become more dense, which can add issues later on as far as just interbranched. They can have pathogen issues, especially if there's so much density in between those branches, because once you cut off that leader, all the energy that was going to be used to push out new growth in a very similar way has to be utilized in another way for the plant. So essentially it's like a budget at the end of your season. If you spend significantly less money, you're still going to want to spend a little bit more so you can have that in the budget for later. Well, topping off that tree is essentially cutting off some of that budget, so the tree needs to use that energy somewhere else. But that is why you will not see a whole lot of people growing Christmas trees in Colorado. The other reason, of course, is our dry environment. The arid winds definitely desiccates those, especially the firs, pretty bad. But you have your tree, you purchased it from us at Fossil Creek Nursery or somewhere else. Regardless of where you get it, it's more than likely from those places. But a couple things are going to need to happen. So, they cut that tree down at the base, right at the bottom of the trunk. And essentially, after that point, of course, the tree is no longer going to live. However, it is going to act like a big straw from this point on. If you continue to add water to where that cut was made, it will continue to uptake that water to try and keep itself alive for as long as possible. Now, that is easily done by cutting and refreshing the cut at the bottom of the tree, because if you take a tree that has just been shipped for hundreds of miles, now that base of everything, number one, it's more than likely spray painted. Number two, it's hardened off and it is very much dead wood. There's no live tissue that is going to try and take anything up or have any kind of sustenance or substance to it. I apologize. And the other thing is that by making a new cut, you're also eliminating any blockage that occurs. Now, blockage is the same, very similar in Christmas trees as it is in cut flowers. If you ever buy cut flowers at the store, they give you a little packet with a granular kind of white salted powder in there, and they label it as flower fertilizer or plant food or whatever you want to call it. Well, it's not. I hate to break it to you, but that little packet is an antibiotic. What it does is essentially prevent bacteria from clogging up the vascular tissue in your cut flowers for a little bit longer so they stay fresher for longer. The same thing can be done by continuously cutting those stems up and up and up to kind of reveal some of that less infected or less blocked tissue, and then it can take up that water easier. Same thing goes to Christmas trees. A lot of people will sell Christmas tree preservatives, which have no fertilizer because there's no roots to take up the fertilizer, so it has no good. But essentially what it does is prevent anything from blocking that vascular tissue for a little bit longer so it can look fresher for longer. That's what Christmas tree preservative is. But again, very important to cut the bottom of that trunk, and you could do it multiple times to keep that tree alive for longer, but it's going to be important that you give it a fresh cut and immediately stick it in some water, because you're essentially exposing the non-blocked vascular tissue to water, which you can take up just great. Mix that with some preservative, and then you have a longer lasting tree. But that's a little bit about Christmas trees. Another thing you can do, especially if you have it outside, I'm glad that I can help out, especially, this time of year. I'm glad that people are still interested in the industry, but thank you. Another thing people do with Christmas trees is they will spray a preservative on there. A lot of times it's a product called wilt proof. Now, wilt proof is a pine oil that's essentially been derived into this kind of wax, which once sprayed on the needles of the tree will prevent any more desiccation. Now, I had mentioned that once you cut the base of the tree and stick it in some water, it acts like a straw. Well, essentially all that water is being pulled up through the trunk, down the branches, out the needles, and back into the sky. However, if you spray wilt proof on that tree, it does two things. Number one, it adds a waxy coating to all those needles, which will prevent any water from leaving those needles. And the second thing it will do is prevent burning for a little bit longer, kind of give it an extra coat on there. So wilt proof is another thing that happens, which is a great transition into our next live greenery, and that's going to be garland and wreaths. So I have a beautifully made wreath here. We here at Fossil Creek custom make all of our wreaths. We have people who have been doing it for decades now. They do a fantastic job. If you ever want a custom wreath made, you go to stores and they don't really look exactly how you want, come by here. Every year we order a bunch of wreaths, a bunch of decorations, and we can custom make anything you like. But I have a custom made wreath here, and you'll notice a couple things on there other than the beautifully done decoration, is that you have a bunch of fir branches. And you can see on the back, they're all attached to this ring here with the branch tissue in there. Well, not a whole lot you can do to keep your wreath alive, because how are you going to stick that in water? You're putting it on the side of your door, hanging it up somewhere. There's no real access for this to have water, but you can wilt proof it, like I talked about a little bit earlier. Now, wilt proofing, again, is very important, because if I wilt proof this wreath before I put decorations on it, if I were to come by and spray with that wilt proof, what that's going to do is add that waxy layer, add that coating, and so whatever water is still in those needles, in those branches, in those buds, is going to remain there for a little bit longer, which will keep your wreath a little bit fresher. Now, wilt-proof tends to be fairly expensive, but it's for a good reason. It's naturally derived from that pine oil, and it's very good for maintaining the green and fresh look on a lot of these plants. Same thing goes with any garland. Use that. I have some over here. Same story with garland. You have your branches, and then of course by wire they are all connected here. But same story. Wilt proof is going to be very important, and these have been wilt proofed. And as you can see, I have no problem touching them with my bare hands. It's not anything that has any toxicity or is going to cause any issues. That being said, I would not spray it inside, because it is kind of a waxy type substance which can stain some items around your home. But anyway, that pretty much does it. I mean, you have your Christmas trees, give them a fresh cut, get some preservative in there to keep them fresher for longer. You have your wreaths, which you're going to want to wilt proof and keep pretty happy. Also, I will say that if you have any of this stuff outside, garland, trees, wreaths, if you're putting it in a west or south exposure, it is going to burn quicker, regardless of how much water or wilt proof you use. If you have it in a shadier location, an east or north side, these things will a lot of times stay fresher for longer. East sides being the best, because north sides tend to have some wind associated with them as well. But just a little tad bit before I move on to my next topic of seasonal plants are tropical or indoor plants. Now, of course, everybody knows the poinsettias. Poinsettias right here, a lot of people call them poinsettias. I will never correct you, but you are incorrect. It is poinsettia, and I'm just throwing that one out there. But they come in a variety of different colors. A lot of times people will start growing these from cuttings, very rarely from seed. And that is very evident. A lot of times you'll see these, I'm going to try to pull that up, these plugs right here, right at the base of the plant. Plugs are used very frequently in greenhouses because they maintain a lot of water and they're good to start roots on something. Other people call them death plugs. They can be removed, especially if it's a younger plant, to eliminate any roots constricted, but many times they will try and root out of those things. But anyway, they will start poinsettias sometime in the summer, and they will grow them in very specific ways to either have this variegation, have this color, or to just look as brilliant as they usually do. A lot of times they're also decorated as well. But a little bit about the plant, the poinsettia. It does like light. It does not need a ton of absolutely direct light, especially if you're using it more as a decoration than a year-to-year kind of plant. You can put it in a little bit more light, but if you're trying to keep your poinsettia alive year to year, you can. I know people that have. A lot of times they look great, but poinsettias are one that people generally use as more of a decorative plant than a year-to-year house plant. But like I said, you can. Best spot for this guy is going to be a brighter indirect light or a very, very low direct light. They can also handle a little bit less of that bright indirect light if absolutely necessary, but again, it is important to know that your poinsettia is not going to want to be directly in a light source from a window, say. But on top of that, care is fairly easy. Many times they will be potted in a very heavy peat moss type mixture, which means it will retain water for a very long period of time. So just make sure that you're sticking a finger in the soil. If it feels dry, go ahead and give it a drink. If it feels wet, you can still leave it alone. Now this is one where you can water it a little bit more than usual, just because if it's dry in the first, couple, quarter to half inch and wet underneath, which should be just moist underneath, shouldn't be wet, but you can give it a good drink. Anyway, going back to the poinsettia, they do have some that they will grow for longer periods of time, or put multiple plants into one pot, have large ones, there's small ones like this, all kinds of variegations, but a bright indirect to moderately indirect light or a very, very dim direct light would also work. This is a plant that will flower, of course. You can see the petals and the reproductive organs on the flowers right here at the top. But good plants, you can keep it alive for many years. It is notable that this is not necessarily a great plant to have around pets. I'll show you right here. Say you wound the plant, you will notice a white latex start to protrude out of the wound that you just made, which is very irritable and can be slightly toxic pretty toxic to a lot of plants or small children around. So just keep in mind that if you do get a poinsettia, keep it out of reach of some of these animals. Now cats may be one of the bigger problems, especially because they're always jumping around. But great plants. I actually am a huge fan of the white and red speckles because it's just cool. It's one of my favorites anyway. But that's poinsettias. Again, multiple different colors, and you want to make sure that you're giving it good moisture, but not keeping it wet, of course. Now, I'd like to transition into another one of have becoming a quickly holiday classic tropical plant, and that is the Norfolk pine. Gotta love the Norfolk pine. Again, many times you will see them decorated either with ornaments or in a kind of foily type wrap with some of these bows on it. And this one has a much different care than the poinsettia will. The Norfolk pine is native to islands in the southern hemisphere, so it is definitely a fan of humidity, very sandy soils, well-draining soils, moderate water, and of course a lower indirect light or a lower direct light. This is not a plant that I would have you put right up against the window, especially here with our high UV. It has more of a potential to burn it, and it also has more of a potential to dry out, which is going to be more important, absolutely, for this guy. Now, I mentioned that humidity is a big thing, or a big part of our Norfolk pines, and it certainly is. Regular misting is always a good idea for your Norfolk pine, just so it has that latent humidity around it. You could also lay a pebble tray at the base and fill that up with water. And of course, all of this is happening in an area in your home where there is, number one, no forced air, no air vents, which would quickly dry it out. There's no forced air. There's no absolutely direct light right up against a window or underneath a southern exposure skylight. You would also want to make sure that you are checking your Norfolk pine regularly for dead needles or branches. In this very similar way, I was talking about the Christmas trees having pathogen issues with the increased density. Same thing goes to the Norfolk pine. You do not want to be inviting unwanted pathogen by creating a dense mess down the base. Now, as far as watering is concerned, you do want to make sure that this is well watered fairly frequently. You want to make sure that it is misted frequently, and you want to make sure that while the soil is not sopping, it has a consistent moisture to it. Now, this will change based on where in your home or directionally you're facing your plant. If I have this plant in a south or west facing, pulled back, of course, window, next to a pebble tray, it's getting a little bit of direct light, mostly bright indirect. I'm going to need to water this a lot more frequently. That only makes sense. If I pull this back even further, I have it underneath, pushed back from like an east-facing window or a north-facing window. It's getting a very little bit to almost no direct light to some small amounts of indirect light. You're going to want to water it a lot less. I mean, watering, a lot of people want a number. They want 1 gallon every week for a 4-inch or something like that, but that's just not how it works. You want to make sure that you are regularly sticking your finger into the soil of the plant that you bought. If it feels drier, give it a water. If it feels wetter, leave it alone. Again, this Norfolk is one which can handle more of a consistent moisture to its soil, but don't keep the whole thing sopping wet the whole time. Norfolk pines also will naturally not have a great scent to them, like a lot of other native pines or more northern hemisphere pines that we use for other decor is. If you break off pieces or needles, you can get some scent here. But if you ever see a Norfolk pine at a hardware store or box store that smells like a pine, it's because it was sprayed. These do not naturally, without any kind of abrasion, have that scent. It's definitely not that volatile. But just another important plant to make sure of. Now, I like doing these classes because I get to hone in on specific plants here. Again, poinsettias being how they are is fantastic. They're a holiday loved plant, and you can keep them year to year. You can have the color year to year. It's all just about keeping that alive through that time. Now, one last thing I want to mention specifically about some of our tropicals here is a lot of people will wrap them like this. That's great. It looks fantastic. But if you look at the bottom here, there is no drainage hole. I cannot tell you how many times people have had their plants overwatered. They're giving it enough light. They're giving it enough humidity. They have it in the perfect place, but their plant's dying. It's rotting. What's happening? That is because you did not take this off. This literally is the best thing in the entire world to rot the roots of your plant. If you do not cut holes in this tin foil here, if you do not remove the foil, water is going to sit right up against those roots. There's going to become an anaerobic environment, meaning there's no air exchange, there's no oxygen that's around those roots, and they will rot. Please either poke a hole or remove the foil for here. Now, I'm guilty of this. Everyone's guilty of that. But I just want to put that out there, that if you're not sure why something's happening with your plant, you got it, and it was nice and decorated like this, it is more than likely because of the latent water that is just staying at the bottom of this foil. Now, that pretty much covers what I wanted to get with some of these tropicals here. But, on top of these two, the poinsettia and the Norfolk pine, a lot of people will buy other things. There are anthuriums, which are really pretty plants with either a white or pink or purple or red flower on there, which is kind of shaped like a plate with like a little, how do I say that? Cigar, let's say, out of the middle of it. And you can look up other names for that plant. They're great. But that's another one people like to get. There's succulents that have great color to them as well. So just keep in mind that there are a bunch of plants out there. For these two specifically, no direct light. Make sure that soil moisture is fairly even for the Norfolk and drying out a little bit for the poinsettia. And if you continue that practice year round, you have a great little tropical holiday arrangement all year. Does anybody have any questions about some of the live greenery that we talked about with the Christmas trees or wreaths or garland or any of the tropicals that I delved into today? I'd be happy to hang out for a minute. Alrighty, well, in that case, I hope everyone has a wonderful season. Feel free to message our website with any questions that you have. Feel free to give us a call here at the nursery. Again, my name is Jackson. It's been a pleasure talking with all of you today, and I hope to see you next time.